This episode is sponsored by Everyday Kids Travel, a kids and parents travel review site. Hi, I'm Christina of ZMUP Entertainment International, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Health, Wealth, and Happiness. I'd like to introduce our next guest, Jennifer. Jennifer is an amazing woman. She is an engineer. She is a penny saver, but she knows how to spend and take amazing vacations because she has had amazing life experiences. And I cannot wait to share Jennifer with you. So say hello.
Hello.
Tell us just in a short segment, tell us about yourself for our new listeners.
Sure. So I'm an engineer. I work in aerospace and I have 3 kids. They're now 8, 9, and 10. So that takes up a lot of our time. But yes, I love traveling. We took a hiatus for a little while they were little, but we dove right in this past year where I got to meet Christy, which has been so much fun. So we have a lot of plans this year and we spent a lot of time traveling last year. I recently changed jobs to go part-time, which has been wonderful. Gotten so much time, so much stuff done. Kind of finding a new groove here.
So let's go ahead and dive right in. So Jennifer, you are someone who likes to keep moving physically, and exercise is your health word. Tell us a little bit about that racquetball that you started to get involved in recently.
Oh yeah. I'm really bad at making time for exercise. I spent a lot of time like with my mom friends around the neighborhood. We would set up walks, take the dogs, take the kids. But I played high school racquetball. And I got to compete in state and nationals, and I was really, really good 20 years ago. And I kept seeing it pop up at work in this league, and it finally, like, the stars aligned, and I joined last year. So I couldn't walk for 3 days after my first game, so that was rough. But it's recently become like more and more manageable, and it's been a lot of fun. I know my husband likes to just do regular workouts. I find them incredibly boring. I have to be moving in some other way that's fun, or getting something done, like beating people or getting beat. Taking the dogs out for a walk, that one's always really good, or park with kids, all that kind of stuff. I try and set step goals. That's been something like I like to, hit something every time. So I set a new step goal that was attainable, and this year it's been pretty good at getting it done. So lots of fun new progress.
Yeah, especially with kids. I mean, there's no sitting still, especially when you have 3 kids.
Not at all.
Keeping up with their activity level and doing things with them, because here's the thing, you're a mom, you're setting the example, right?
Right. And they're great. Like, they're super active. They're super I don't know, they're natural at it. My daughter, she has a 2nd-degree black belt. So she can throw any of us down. The littlest, he just got invited to test for his black belt. They all play soccer, so they've been fun to watch and keep up with, and they're motivators for me too. So I hope to be as good as them at something one of these days. Evie comes with me to play racquetball sometimes. She'll watch. There's a glass wall in the back, so she'll sit back there. She'll take my racket and hop into one of the other empty courts along the way, and she gets lots of compliments. She's a natural at that one too. So that's been a lot of fun to watch.
That's so nice. I mean, you said it right there, natural motivators, because you're not always good about sticking to it, are you?
No, not at all. Oh my gosh, so many things I've started and failed. But I mean, I do get good. I don't know. I feel really great when I stick to something. I just have to find ways to keep it interesting enough to stick to. So that's definitely an area I can focus on improving. And I hope to with a lot of my newly found free time. So
yes, absolutely. One of the things you have started to do is start working with the kids and doing healthy meal planning. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I learned probably 4 or 5 years ago that if they help me make it, they're way more likely to eat it. And part of this even flowed into our garden in our backyard. So I had let each of them pick something out. I remember going to Lowe's when they were little and letting them pick out packets of seeds. And Charlie went to pick out, it was like radishes or something, but it looked like a hot dog. He wanted to grow a hot dog. So we talked about how it wasn't a hot dog, and he eventually picked carrots. Nobody liked carrots. But when he grew his carrot, which looked like a deformed little alien, we brought it inside, we cleaned it up, we chopped it up. He loves carrots now. So like from that, I'm starting to figure out, okay, if they grow it, they'll like it. They love chives now because we have them growing in the window. They'll go cut them off. Um, they make salsa with me all the time. So like they'll get in like 2 cups of vegetables just because they're eating the salsa that they chopped up. The boys especially love to cook or bake. They want to just lick the pan when I make banana bread or cookies or help spill the chocolate chips. So it kind of goes both ways, healthy and unhealthy, but they love being involved. I love having them in the kitchen, not the mess afterwards, but that's been a lot of fun. And my daughter, they'll start asking what's healthy, what's not healthy. So even when they're helping make mac and cheese, they realize that it's not necessarily a healthy option. But yeah, they'll like to explore and try new recipes, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. What's funny, I remember myself when I was that age and I would ask my mom, I'm like, what did this come from? Like, and she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what animal is that?
Yeah, yeah, we have that conversation a lot.
I'm a vegetarian now.
I could see how you would get there from those questions.
But it's interesting. I mean, as moms, you bring this little person into the world and you're like, I want you to stay perfect and healthy and all of these things. So you really do start to change your whole mindset. And for them at their age, in particular, since we have them the same age, is that curiosity. It's like they want to say, well, what are you doing? But it does, I noticed, change the eating habits. Like you're saying, let's grow it in the window. Let's grow it in the backyard. Let's do this. And even if it's just a taste, at least it's a taste.
Oh yeah. And they're so adventurous. And my husband is from the Philippines. So I thankfully have like his culture to bring in too. And their food is fantastic, So I have my mother-in-law making all these things that I wouldn't necessarily make too. So I've loved that, like just having them involved in our life. They're trying all kinds of things that I wouldn't make or even think to try. And I mean, some of it they don't like, but they'll almost always give it a try, especially my oldest. The boys sometimes not so much, but that's been also really helpful because I don't know that I would be as creative as my mother-in-law. And I've tried to make some of her recipes. I was like, can you give me the recipe for it? She'll give me a list and I'll try and do it. And then I'm like, don't you add like sugar? And she's like, yeah, that's in there too. Don't you add garlic? Yeah, that's in there too. And I remember growing up, one of our neighbors was also Filipino, and his mom and his grandma were in the kitchen. And she told me that the way that they teach is that you come and they'll tell you stories, and you like they don't write it down. You just do it with them, and over time you learn how to do it, that was also a really fun way. And that's something that we're bringing into cooking with our kids. They can make salsa, I'm sure, by heart at this point, and mostly correct.
That's so much fun. You also have a really, really interesting story about being a surrogate. Can you share that story with us? Because, I mean, this story just is beautiful.
Oh yeah, I would love to. And this one, I mean, I've found that a lot of my motivations, if I'm doing it for somebody else, I'm way more likely to stick to it, which is kind of backwards in my mind, but like I know that that's what works for me. After I got pregnant with my last, we had some friends that use a surrogate to carry their son, and they actually won a round of surrogacy, which is crazy. But in that process, they had extra embryos. So to have another child, they posted on Facebook, like, we're looking for somebody to carry embryos for we want another kid. And so I started messaging her and learning about what the process was, because we were sure that we were done after our third. And she taught me a lot. I did a lot of research, and just knowing the losses that they've been through and others that I'm friends with, and knowing that we had our three so fast that by choice we said, okay, we want to have a June baby, and there we are with a June baby. So we were so lucky to have them, and it was an easy pregnancy. I liked being pregnant, and knowing what they had been through, it was perfect timing for me. When I told her I needed a year after my son was born to be ready to do this, just physically, they said that they didn't necessarily want to wait. And I said, yeah, go try and find somebody else. If you find somebody, awesome. If not, we'll talk then. And I remember messaging her a couple months before my son's birthday saying, okay, let's get these contracts in place. Let's figure out what we got to do. And she told me that they just found out that their surrogate was pregnant. And I remember feeling sad for me, like thrilled for them, but I was like ready. I was ready to do it. So what started as kind of something for a friend, we went to an agency, and our agency matched us to this couple who amazingly lives down the street, maybe 15-20 minutes. And how the agency works is you give them all of your criteria, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and they'll match you with somebody who's looking for a surrogate. And they sent us this letter. So they have the couple or the person write a letter, and that's kind of your first introduction. And from reading the letter, I was like, this feels like I could know you. And then they set up a phone call, kind of like a Zoom call, but we met, and it was one of those surreal things. It feels perfect. And they said, we don't normally ask on the phone. We normally ask after, but does everybody want to move forward? And we said yes, and they said yes, and it took 3 rounds of IVF. The first one, we got pregnant, but we lost really, really early. The second one didn't work. And then the third time was a beautiful baby boy. And I remember thinking after delivery, all my babies look the same. So he came out, and I got a glimpse of him. And I was like, you don't look like one of mine. He looked just like his older brother. I had seen pictures of him as a baby, and they were identical. And it was perfect, and we were so happy and thankful to be able to give somebody else the family that they wanted, just like we got for ourselves.
That story is just amazing. I mean, anybody who can do that in the heart to go through it. And to the health question, what kind of things did you change? Did you notice there was difference in the pregnancy that time than the others, that you had to do different things?
So I had a goal weight, kind of like we always do, to get down to when we were going through this process, just to make sure I was in a good zone. And I was pretty careful about my kids. There's all these rules about what you can and can't eat. So I was relatively good. I took my vitamins. I didn't drink too much caffeine, but I remember with him, his parents were great. If I said I was craving carbs, I remember one day this box on my porch showed up with a bunch of spaghetti because I was like, yeah, your baby wants some pasta. And she was so sweet and sent this little care package of pasta. But I remember reading the labels on everything, okay, I can stay under this many milligrams of caffeine, being super diligent about, what I ate and making sure I had my vitamins all the time. And with technology being really cool, I found these they were called belly buds. So it's little speakers that you can put on your belly. So his mom would read books, or his brother would tell stories and send recordings, and we would put them on the little belly buds to let him listen. Just in my belly, and I would send her videos of him kicking, and it was a little bit different. I was always somewhat disconnected. Not that I didn't want a baby or anything, but I didn't feel this supernatural connection to my kids. I was excited, I was happy, but I fell in love with them after they were born. So in that sense, I felt like it might be the same this time if I had him. There wasn't anything, no huge connection. I was happy. I was keeping him healthy, but there wasn't anything super connecting me to him in a way that I know a lot of women feel with their babies, where they struggle with saying how could you possibly give a baby to somebody? But I know for me, having my feelings be like that, it was easy. And I remember, you get to decide whether the parents can be in the delivery room or not. And I said, okay, as long as you stand behind me. But in the moment, I was like, if you want to catch him, you can catch him. So they went down there, and just seeing their face that he went straight from me to her, and it was beautiful.
That is just a remarkable gift to give anybody, because you're a remarkable woman.
Oh, thank you.
Overall, in your health, what kind of advice would you give to a mom, another woman, someone who's just looking for a better place in their health journey?
Yeah, I think figuring out what works for you and making it a priority has been what works the best for me. Definitely not foolproof, but I found that that's typically how I make it work. And planning, holy cow. I find that if I plan for whatever I'm going to do, as well as make it a priority, then it seems to work better. When I find myself like, okay, I'm right on track, but I didn't pick out what I was going to eat that day, so I didn't grocery shop for it and it's not there, or I didn't book the racquetball court or text whoever I was playing, then it's easy to just say, okay, then not today. Today's not the day. So planning and prioritizing is my main piece of advice for myself and others.
Put that on the checklist. Plan, prioritize, and tomorrow we will.
And tomorrow. Yep, especially for tomorrow.
Well, hello, it's Sylvia. I've been asked to do a segment on health, wealth, and happiness, and here I am. And this is about health, believe it or not, here at Universal. Because getting out by water, that's health. Getting out in public, that's health. Getting around people, doing things, enjoying your family, which I have done all day. Because this is now sunset. Enjoying your family. Enjoying time, quality time with yourself. Doing things that's not work all the time. You see what I'm saying? You gotta play. That is health. Yes, that is getting out and walk. That's a little bit of exercise. Here's that ball. I'm just watching it turning and turning, and it's just mesmerizing me. Oh, you just have to forgive me when I lose my train of thoughts after a long day. It's so nice. Drinks. But anyway, yes, give yourself some time to play, have fun, share with family. I'm Sylvia. Jennifer's second word is freedom. Ooh, this is a big one. I love this. This is something from the moment I met her, she talked about. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit more about how wealth and freedom mean something to you.
Freedom in the sense of like we can choose, especially with our time, what we can do, as long as like we have the built up the wealth that we can use to do so. So we tried really hard early on to make sure that we could get out of debt to have this type of freedom. I mentioned Dave Ramsey's book. If anybody hasn't read it, I think it's a great read. But he talks about the debt snowball, and a lot of people leave college or whatever you do right after you become an adult with a significant amount of debt, whether it's because of college, because of a car, because of a house, and how that kind of can rule your life if you let it. And while, I mean, we make decent money, we're both engineers, but we have 3 kids, so daycare is also ridiculously expensive. So once we kind of got settled into our lives with all of our kids and we bought our house, we've lived in the same house since we got married. We've only ever bought one car until like 2 weeks ago. That's our second car. He still has the car he had when we met, but we took any kind of increase in funding that we had to get rid of our debt. So if a child got out of diapers, that was a big one, stopped on the formula, they got out of daycare, we would try and put whatever money we were putting towards that onto a piece of debt. We didn't have too many student loans. So the car was really our big thing. So we paid off the car, and then we kind of did the math on the house. And I realized if we pay this off early, we would save like $100,000 just by not paying our mortgage as normal. So we did that. And after 7 years, we had everything paid off. So I think we're 4 or 5 years debt free. So we've been able to kind of put money aside for other things. And part of that kind of led into me going part-time when I realized, we are at the point where we kind of have the freedom. And do I want to keep working to increase that and spending my time that way? Or is what we have, if I decrease my hours, enough to keep us on the same trajectory that we both agreed that we wanted. And it was a kind of easy answer once we did the math. Is it worth this much extra time? And the time was way better spent with my parents, my kids, volunteering activities. So they kind of go hand in hand, and we love to use it. We did set aside some money for travel, just like in our monthly planning. And I like to use points to travel. So that's also another big kind of game to me. So I like to make sure we keep racking those up. And we're using them to go to Hawaii this summer. We went to Alaska with our family last year for a couple weeks. And just, man, it's been so great to make, that part of our life a priority, as opposed to always kind of working to make money, which I mean, we still do. We both have careers, but we found a really good balance, and it's been great.
Yeah. And finding the balance is not easy for a lot of people, but figuring out
No,
how to prioritize, which I think is back to.
yes, for sure. And I mean, we've been lucky with kind of how we've been able to balance out our careers. My husband, early on, his career had him traveling a lot. So I was home, I was holding down the fort. We also had a huge support in his parents. They helped us take care of the kids for years before school. So they did go to daycare, but they spent a lot of time when they were babies at his parents' house. So that was a huge help and a huge factor in getting us to where we are. But when he traveled a lot and he had long hours, I was more flexible and I worked 980s. So every other Friday we would go to the zoo or the science center, or some kind of fun activity. And then when I stepped up into management, he kind of took the more less high profile role to make sure that somebody was here for the kids. So with me going part-time, it's funny, it kind of perfectly aligned again when he transitioned into a new role that requires him to travel more and him to be more diligent on which hours he's in the office. It was perfectly aligned to when I was ready to step back, and made it easier to figure out who gets who on the bus and who's going to be there when the bus gets home in the afternoon, and all the activities in between.
So what's your favorite part now of being part-time?
Oh my gosh. I would always have this list in my head of things that I have to do. There were sticky notes everywhere. I would text myself a reminder, and it was kind of like this weight on me all the time. I just had this list of stuff that had to get done, or I was letting somebody else down, usually, or like groceries letting me down. I don't have food here. Um, but the first day I had off, it was actually the day after my son's birthday. So I booked this behind the scenes tour of the zoo. So like we got to focus on our son. We took him out to whatever lunch he wanted, whatever restaurant he wanted to go to for lunch. So that was great. I only got one call on my day off. So people were starting to recognize the time blocked off in my calendar. And then the Monday after, I got through like 75% of the things on that list that would have taken me, no joke, a month to do, including registering my car. So that one coming off, it like, I started to feel it. And I noticed that I started to become myself again, become happier. I walked into the office and someone was like, "You're really cheerful today." I was like, yeah. And then last week was our second week off. And we went to go visit my grandma in Chicago. And so that was a great use of our time. And then the Monday, the kids were off school, but I got like everything done. The laundry's put away, the groceries are there. So it's kind of like now I have the weekend time where everybody's here to do the things without worrying about this list of all the stuff that I have to do. So that's kind of been my favorite part so far, is getting to enjoy the time off that we normally had and getting everything still done, getting it off my mind.
Yeah, the freedom. I mean, it's interesting. It is. It's that balance getting, okay, we're at the point where we've got a lot of things. And like you said, I've got it paid off. That's exciting. And now, okay, well, I can balance this all in a whole different way. I can have the whole world in my hand.
Exactly.
And to have that freedom to do your list and to spend time with your family and kids, I mean, that's priceless. To
Oh
me,
yeah.
yeah, you cannot put a tag on any of that.
I read another great book. It was called Die with Zero. And with all these books, I'm like, they're great theories. You can implement them into your life however you want. But the premise of that book was essentially, you only have this much time. And if you can calculate when you're going to die, this sounds really, this sounds bad. But like, if you know how long you're going to live, you know how much money you need. So you can figure out, how many years am I working for free if I continue to work until 65, or whenever it is you plan on retiring. And he says, if you can figure out that you have enough to live, or you can kind of, roll back how many hours you work, go part-time and know that you still have enough, then you don't waste these years working for just having money in the bank when you die. And then one of the common comments that he got was, well, to leave something to your kids. And his retort to that was, give it to them now. You can still die with zero. Give it to them when it's the most effective time in their life. So that could be for college, for their first house, for a wedding. And same with any charity you want to support. The best time to use that money is now. They're in most need now. And then he also talks about life points, is how he calls them. You can use your time or your money on the time in your life when you can best enjoy it. So a lot of that is with travel. And he said you're in the best part of your life to travel, when you're between 25 and 55 or something in there, when you have the health to enjoy all of these activities, as opposed to retiring at 65 and not necessarily being able to go everywhere if your health hasn't kept up. So he talks about, you make these memories and you get to enjoy them the rest of your life too. So you're getting like life points on top of life points just because of the memories you have. And my dad, this one really, like when I read it, I called my dad and I was like, you're doing this. They got some money from their property that they owned. And he was trying to think of what to do with it. And he texted one day to my brothers and I saying, if I pay for a cruise to Alaska, will you guys go? And we're like, yeah, we will. And then it grew into this 2-week trip where we spent a lot of time on land, a lot of time on the cruise. And it was his way of using the money in this way to experience it now, not necessarily holding it to give it to somebody later, but enjoying the experience with our families. And I can't tell you how many times I asked my son, did you enjoy this vacation? Did you enjoy this trip? And he was like, well, it's not as good as Alaska. So it's like, for him, for all of us that went, it was a great use of the money. I mean, it was his money, but I think it was a great use and a perfect time.
I'm 100% for when you can do the big family vacations, when you can get the siblings in, get, together, all the generations and go, let's go. Because the memories that you're creating, you can't buy those,
Right.
So, I mean, you can spend all during that trip, sure.
Oh yeah, you sure can.
But you can't buy the memories.
Right. When we go to Hawaii this summer, everybody's going, my brother, my dad, my in-laws, my sister-in-law, like it just got bigger. It's going to be great.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. Now, you and I both know they don't teach us these things in school. It's something that I have said, boy, if I was in education and could do something, every senior in high school would learn how to pay rent, pay a mortgage. What are taxes? Things that until you become adult, you don't know. So what would you give for advice for somebody who's looking for some freedom for themselves?
So, I mean, if you're looking for yourselves, we had a financial advisor. My dad was great with this. As soon as I got out of college, he said, here's my guy, call, get an appointment and set up an account. He was like, you're at this point in your life where you're used to living off of $50 a week or whatever it is, like just for beer and food. So keep living like that. And we still kind of try and do that as much as we can today. And he was like, put away the money. If you never see it sitting in your checking or savings account, then it's not like you don't have this urge to go and do something. So I met with my financial advisor. We have the same guy we had 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Holy cow. And he's helped us invest in, I haven't had to learn as much of that just because I trust him and I've asked questions. He's taught me a lot of things along the way. So finding a good financial advisor, whether it's with a company or with your family or your spouse or whoever. But with your kids, if you're trying to teach them, what I've found most useful is talking about it. Like I remember, like we would ask like how much money somebody makes, and it was always like, shh, we don't talk about that. But I I don't know. I don't like to do it that way. When the kids ask how much money I make, I tell them, I was like, you don't need to go tell everybody how much money I make, but like for this type of job, this is what I make. If you choose this type of job, this might be what you make. And when they ask how much dinner was, which they always do if we go out to eat, like I think it's important to say, like, this was expensive. We went out to eat and it cost $100. So they know how much I make. They know how much time I spent working to pay for that meal. We just bought a car a week or two ago. They asked how much the car was. Like, we got to tell them these things so they have some idea of, what it costs to live, what it costs when I pay for my gas, when I pay for my utilities, how much my house costs. If they don't know, how can they possibly plan for it in the future? And taxes, I don't know. Like, I still don't understand taxes. So if somebody has some advice for that, like, give me a call.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I'm with you too. If you're not talking about it to the kids, then how on earth do they know how to have a conversation about it for themselves in their future?
And they find it fascinating. At least mine do. They like try and start up their own little business. I have this craft table like across the room from me right here, where one of their things was to make these little perler bead things, and they tried to sell them on the bus. Like they try and make their own little businesses to make their own money. I also opened them. They each have their own bank account, so they get to choose like when they get money for their birthday, do they want to spend it? They have a little piggy bank upstairs, or they can put it in the bank account. And recently, with interest rates being so high, I opened a high yield savings account. My son just had his birthday, and I said, "Okay, you got this much money. Do you want me to put it in the bank for you? Is there something you want to buy?" Really wants the Lego Titanic, but like $650 is a little steep. So I'm like, well, maybe you need to save a little bit. We'll see how we feel. And he comes back and goes, please put it in my high yield savings account. And I was like, you rock, sir. Good choice.
There it is.
Yep,
Have the conversations and learn about it and do it. Just take care of it.
definitely.
I like this one. For Jennifer's happiness word, she is a philanthropist. That's a nice big word.
Yeah.
Yes, tell us more. You have such experience.
I think people search a lot for, where they get their happiness. And when I talked about my motivator being doing things for other people, I think it probably comes from the part of me that enjoys this the most. When you think about what makes you happy, I think a lot of people will think of, things usually like if I had this thing, I would be happy. Or a lot of times it's your family, which that one is a huge one for me. When I was growing up, my parents adopted my little brother from Ukraine. So I remember him coming home and they showed all the pictures, and even in the process of the adoption, learning a lot about how the rest of the world lives and realizing like, it's not the way that you and I live, and realizing, how lucky we are to be here. So when I went to college, I spent a lot of time in an organization called Engineers Without Borders, where I was lucky enough to go to Bolivia like 5 times. And funny enough, that's where I don't want to say it's where I met my husband, but I got a picture like right before our wedding of him and I at the airport going to Bolivia, and we had no idea we were on the same plane as each other. So that was kind of baffling. I knew he went, he knew I went, but we didn't know that we went together. And so, like, in all the time that I spent in Bolivia, it was incredible. Like, just learning and living with these people while we did our projects, mostly around like clean water, but seeing the happiness in the communities when, in our mind, like, it's a nation that has extreme poverty. So you would think like they have such like dread or a lack of happiness because of it, but they're some of the happiest people I've ever seen and some of the most generous people I've ever seen. Kind of realizing in that moment, like the happiness comes from, being safe, being healthy, being loved, and not from anything that you have. It's just from the experience of being with people and doing things that you enjoy. And some part of that is kind of played into the rest of our lives. But I've loved to travel and see how other places in the world live. I went to the Philippines before my husband and I got together, actually, and I got to go to some of the nicest beaches in the world and also go into the city where there's also some extreme poverty there. So there's like these huge contrasts. But yeah, I try and keep that in my mindset of, how much we do have here, how much freedom we have here, and what we can do for other people. And in those moments, it's when I feel the most joy, whether it's for somebody I don't know in another country or, from what I can do for my kids to make them happy brings me joy.
Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about happiness and poverty. I mean, in extreme poverty, because we've
Mhm.
both seen it. And one of the things I find fascinating is they're almost happier because they don't have things. They
Yes.
don't have to worry about that car and that car payment and the insurance and all the things that go with that. They don't have all those things, but they do have a different sense of community where they
Hmm.
really do depend on each other a little bit more. And you have that extended family that you're with all the time, whether you want to be or not,
Yeah, right.
taking care of each other versus here where we're much more separated.
It really is like a less is more, I think, a lot of the time. And I there are some books that I was looking at reading and just some general theories that I've seen and trending and like kind of this whole realm of like less being more. If you don't have the car to have the insurance that you have to worry about paying, or like all of this stuff in your house that you have to worry about cleaning up after, like me talking about crossing things off my list, giving me like a relief. Like the same thing is with all of this stuff. And my husband and I talk about it all the time. Like we need to just get rid of some of this stuff because it like brings some level of stress to just try and keep up with it. And, the moments that we feel the most joy could be when we're just outside with a soccer ball. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, it's like the children. A couple episodes ago with my mother, we were talking about children. Children will get the toys, but forget the toy, they're playing with the box.
Yes. Yes. So many moments of that.
Pure joy, pure happiness.
So there was one with Charlie, my middle son. I find such a hard time trying to get him something for his birthday every year. And there was something I did. I can't remember what it was. Something that just like screamed his name. And I was like, Charlie would love it if I did this for him. And I remember I did that and I put balloons in his room. And the next year when I asked him what do you want for your birthday? What's the favorite things that you've ever gotten? He was like, oh, it was sleeping with him. He wanted me to sleep in his room. So I slept in his bed with him when he was like 6 or 7 or whatever. And his favorite birthday present was me spending that time sleeping in his room with him and waking up with balloons on the floor. Not like this super expensive present, just the moment, the experience is what he wanted and what he remembered the most after all the years. So now every year I get asked to sleep in his room and put balloons on the floor when he wakes up.
Oh, that's so
So, yeah,
sweet.
didn't they realize it?
Oh, so what kind of daily practices and happiness do you have?
So trying to step back and, recognizing what truly makes me happy, and planning for those things. So if it's making sure I don't have anything that I have to do tomorrow, I think those help the most because when I don't have this list, then all of a sudden I get these, I don't want to call them ideas, but like I get these other plans of like, okay, I will go and cuddle with the kids. We'll go and make dinner together. So that's what happened last night. Like I got everything done, or no, this morning I got everything done. I had my list for today. I knew I had plenty of time to do it. So we all made pancakes together for breakfast because I was off work. And they all came in and Charlie wanted to make a square. It turned into a snowman and I don't know, they had a blast with it. So making the time and like eliminating all the stresses from every day has been big, and planning to make sure that we have that time is, I think, an enabler to that.
For someone who is in the pursuit of happiness, happiness means so much to every single person. But what would you tell somebody to take a look at in their life in looking for happiness?
I think once you start to realize what has made you happy and kind of chasing that. So I've realized I knew before having kids that travel made me happy, experiencing different cultures, different parts of the real world, different foods, made me happy. And that one day I would love to do that with my kids. So, I found that and I'm trying to find ways to keep chasing after that. And I realized like the slow time where we get to just enjoy our friends, our family, our kids brings me the most joy. So trying to make sure that you prioritize and plan for it as best as you can, um, and enjoy it while it's there. Because sometimes too, I found that, I'll plan this elaborate birthday party with all of these people. And then before I know it, it's gone because I was making sure I had the cake or that the presents were in the right place or that we got to sing the song. So yeah, even if you plan for it, make sure you enjoy it while it's happening.
If you could give the gift of health, wealth, or happiness, which one would it be and why?
So I struggled with answering this one between happiness and health because if you don't have health, sometimes like everything else is really hard. But knowing that we do have a decent factor in playing in our own health, I think I would give the gift of happiness because that one seems really it's something that the whole world sometimes struggles to find, or even if you have it, maintaining it. So I would definitely choose happiness so that you can get all of the joy. And when you have that, you're happier and you can create that for other people and hopefully health and wealth fall in line behind it.
Here is a question from our previous guest.
What do you see as the single most important thing in your life and why?
Oh my, that's loaded. The single most important thing, it has to be like my family. They bring me the most joy, and it's like everything that you do is based on them and being with them and having the most time and experiences with them. So can't tell you which one of my family. It'll vary on any given day, but definitely my family.
Jennifer, I want to thank you so much for being a guest today here on Health, Wealth, and Happiness and sharing your insights with us. I know people have learned something wonderful about you and you had some great advice to share. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love getting to share all of what I've learned along the way.
And we'll see you next time.